"Come on, Daddy," she says seductively. "Don't you want me to be your little girl slave?" I stare at her, and the disbelief on my face is very clear and obvious. Do you want to be my little girl? Really? The pretense of her seduction disappears, and she says, Yes, I do. We just talked and you shared something with me, I say, and it might have been the first time you and I were completely honest about this possible aspect of our relationship, I say. She nods eagerly. Yes, Daddy, I trust you. But then the first thing you did when I said to think about it was try to manipulate me. She looks ashamed, really ashamed. Yes, Daddy, she says. Sometimes I can't help myself. I'm so eager to close a deal. Little girl, I say sternly, and her eyes open widely. It may be that it's the first time I've called her little girl, but it might be my tone. You also called yourself a slave. You can't seem to get past the idea that being a little girl means being a slave to someone. You aren't something to sell, and our relationship isn't a deal. Do you understand? Oh God, she says, and I realize this situation is almost breathtaking for her. My tone of voice and sudden very stern approach. I asked you a question, little girl, I say with the same sternness. I understand, Daddy, she says very quickly. If you're going to be my little girl, there can't be manipulation, I say. Be honest with me. How much of what you have done when interacting with me is manipulation? She swallows hard. A lot, she says softly. I wanted you to treat me like a little girl. I shake my head. No, you didn't, I say. You want me to spoil you. That's not the same thing. You're certain being a little girl means being a slave. She nods. No, it's not. I want what Candace and Kurt have, but I'm afraid to do what Candace did to get it. I'm afraid of becoming a slave. I understand that, I say. She took a leap of faith. Alana nods. Are you willing to take a leap of faith? She nods. The first thing you'll need to do is deal with what you've already done, I say, because you need to understand manipulation has no place in a relationship. In fact, manipulation is abusive, exactly what you're afraid of. She nods, and then her eyes grow wide again. Oh God, you're right. I can tell she's horrified by the realization. So the very first thing we would do with me as your daddy and you as my little girl is address the issue of manipulation. Do you understand that? She nods and says, You are going to punish me? I nod. You need to associate unpleasantness with feeling bad, and you need to do something so neither of us holds on to what has already been done. Do you understand? I understand the first part, Daddy, she says tentatively. I need to think of manipulating you as something bad. The second part is important too, I say. You need to realize that it's done. There's no reason to feel bad about it anymore. You'll pay the price for what you've done, and that means you don't need to pay the price any more than that. She nods slowly and then says, Why do I trust you? What do you mean? I mean, I've been so afraid and I've used every skill I have to make you be my daddy. To make you do the daddy thing without actually being a daddy. I mean the way you talk about it. And now? Well, why do I trust you, even though you're going to spank me? Spank you? I ask. I said we need to deal with things and there would be punishment, but I didn't say it has to be a spanking. What other punishments are there? I shrug. Some daddies make their little girls write lines. Some daddies punish in other ways, withholding privileges and stuff. The key is something that causes discomfort so it's meaningful, but it doesn't have to be a spanking. It just needs to make an impact, and that doesn't mean physical impact. In fact, the emotional impact and the intellectual impact are much more important. She looks at me for a moment and says, I think a spanking is the only thing that will make an impact. There's more, I can tell. She remains silent, though. I smile and take a stab at it. And you'll know right away if I spank you whether or not you can handle this thing. Her eyes open wide, and she asks, How did you? She shakes her head. Okay, so how does this work? Why am I spanking you? She looks at the floor and then says, Because I used sales tactics to try to get you to do what I wanted. Because I never listened to you about what the daddy little girl thing was, and instead I just tried to manipulate you over and over. I see a tear in her eye, and she says, And I thought so little of you that I thought you wanted a slave. For me, little girl, I say, the thing that hurts is the manipulation. I think the other two things, not listening and thinking I wanted a slave, came because you never thought of our conversations as anything other than part of a sales cycle. Am I right about that? Oh God, Jacob, she whispers. Yes, you're right. I treated it like, she says. I'm sorry. I think she's about to weep.